Well, we come to the end, and hopefully we say something really good for last. I know we say something good for last. Thank you all for being here. You know, the concept of collab, the three thoughts behind it, to connect, to collaborate, and to communicate, is just the beginning of a great conversation that should lead to action. And certainly, Tom Friedman has left us with a lot to think about and to collaborate on as we go forward. Here this afternoon, we've asked 5 of our community leaders to sit with me for a short period of time and to reflect on some of the things that Tom Friedman has said and some of the questions that you've sent in to us by Twitter. So let me introduce them and let us get started. To begin with, the general manager of MARTA, a gentleman whose name and face have become familiar to all of us, who believes that transit is not just about mobility. Transit is also about community and about health and about a bigger sense of vision. So, Keith Parker, would you come on out and join us? Next, we have a gentleman who needs really no introduction. Many of you saw him earlier this afternoon, and you know he is not just an innovator in education, he is an active voice for how we transform education. Mr. Ron Clark Academy. Third is a lady whose work is becoming more and more important to this community as we grow and develop. She is the leader of the Latino American Association, and we all know that Hispanic Americans are a big part of a community that's growing and becoming more integrated into the overall fabric. And Jeffrey is one of our great thought leaders in how we do this and welcome our new neighbors. Jeffrey Tapia. Next is a gentleman who has shown great leadership in our elected politics, and that is a gentleman who leads the Cobb County Commission, who's been steeped in this community, not just in Cobb, but in the broader regional conversation, Mr. Tim Lee. And last, also a gentleman some of you may have heard from earlier in our events, a gentleman who is the godfather of venture capital, a gentleman who constantly thinks about innovation and how do we help innovation thrive and fund and get started up. Mr. Sig Mosley. So I'm going to start with a softball. I told all of them before we started that I was going to toss them some very hard questions. And actually, some of the questions I'm going to toss them come from you, and those are really hard. But I want to start with the softball to kind of help ease their nerves a little bit and ask them to think about community from where they sit and think about, as we launch Atlanta Forward from this great conversation for the last day and a half and the things that Tom Friedman had given us, going from a connected to a hyper-connected world, going from an interlinked to an interdependent world, what do you think are some of the things we need to pay attention to in Atlanta as Atlanta leaders in community? Keith, let's start with you.
Well, first, thank you to all the folks who were behind making this event possible, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about public transportation. But let me mention just something quickly. I had an opportunity recently to hear our great mayor give a speech about what he saw as a vision for Atlanta moving forward, and that Atlanta would not simply be competing with one of my former cities, Charlotte, and some of the other cities in America, but that he really wanted to see Atlanta begin to move as an international city. There's no such thing as a truly great international city without a great public transportation system to go along with it. And as we start to be a part of this movement to be one of the great international cities in the world, I want people to have wonderful things to say about MARTA. And as we further engage in our conversation about what makes Atlanta special, I want for MARTA to be what CATS became a part of, how CATS became a part of Charlotte, the transit system there. and how the RTD in Denver has become an iconic part of what makes Denver special, and certainly New York City Transit being a part of what makes people want to visit New York City. And as we embark on, again, some great things that we want to take advantage of with this opportunity that we have now to recreate MARTA and reframe MARTA and rebrand MARTA, I want all of you in the audience to not just be people who want and aspire for MARTA to be good, but you want and you'll become great advocates for the public transportation system. And that's what I think we need to do in part to bridge those gaps in terms of where the have-nots have such a small chance of moving up in terms of social mobility and income mobility, where students have more access to all the opportunities of this region. And we want the public transportation system to be a big part of that solution. So I believe the opportunity is great, and I think we have the people and the wherewithal to be great.
Ron?
First, I want to say, during Thomas Friedman's speech, my lungs felt tight. I was nervous. My hands were sweating. It's scary stuff. I mean, I was sitting there. I've never had a panic attack. I was like, am I having a panic attack? Because it is a journey, and things are moving so quickly. In 1992, the first commercial text was sent. Today, over 20 billion text messages were sent. The internet didn't start commercial until 1995. I didn't ever see it until 1997, and I didn't own a cell phone until 2000. And now things are moving so quickly. I was doing a lesson this morning with my kids about the attack in Kenya, and we were talking about how members of Al-Qaeda from Somalia, they have taken credit for it. And my kids didn't know what Al-Qaeda was. And these are fifth graders, new to my school, and I'm like, how could you not know what Al-Qaeda is? And then I realized they weren't born during 9/11. And so things are moving so fast, and there's so much information. 5 years ago, the website for our school, y'all, it was hot. It was like the hottest thing, and people used to go to our website and say, wow, that website is so awesome, and now our website is a dinosaur. I mean, it's antiquated. Thank goodness we have Cavello, this organization that's helping us fix it. But things are moving so quickly, and so it's just overwhelming. And he talked about, you can't be average. At our school, Runkler Academy, we're supposed to be the most different, innovative, creative school in the world. 5 years ago, we could run, and we were beating everybody. Now we are having to sprint. I mean, you're having to run as fast as you can to be different, but I'm going to tell you, what's going to save Atlanta and what's going to save it is education, and giving these kids the education that's not boring, it's fired up, it's exciting, and it is not just technology, because this is cold, people, and internet and technology and this. I went to a meeting, these 10 college students got to have a lunch with me. They wrote this thing. I wanted to have lunch with them. Boom. They were all down on their phones, and I was just looking at them. Where's the human interaction? Where's the relationship? So it's got to be a blend of technology. So it's a blend of this technology. I'm telling you, who's going to be superior and who's going to stand up? It's the people with the relationships. And no one's better than having relationships than people in the South. We know how to do that. And so if we can focus on the human interaction, the relationships, coupled with this great technology, and teach kids those skills, that's when I think we're going to see a lot of success in the next generation.
Jeffrey.
These 2 days have provoked amazing ideas and conversation, and what I'd like to make sure before we leave and as we move forward with our plans is that we ask that we're very deliberate and intentional in every strategy we employ from this and every solution. How are we engaging and involving the Latino community or the immigrant community? The Latino community, people always ask, is it Latino, is it Hispanic? You can use either one you want. I tend to use Latino. The Latino community population is the largest minority in the United States. And in Georgia, it's almost 10% of the population. In the Atlanta, in this public school system, nearly 12%. It's also the population with the highest incidence of poverty in Georgia, and has a higher incidence of poverty in Georgia than the national average for Latinos. It's a very important population, and quite often we forget to ask the question of how we are reaching out to the Latino community to help them integrate. The burden of integration is not just on the immigrant, it's also on all of us to make sure that we're being inclusive in our conversations and our solutions and our strategies.
Tim, I'm going to take a different question at this point in time. I know. We don't have a whole lot of time left, so I'm trying to move it along just a little bit.
Just as well, I forgot the question.
as an elected official, you have to deal with people of all sectors and all economic backgrounds in a community and try to do the best you can with few government resources to help as many of them as you can. Tom Friedman said, average is over. But one of the folks in our audience asked a very deep question. How do we help the people who aren't above average? What can government do as we go forward, and who do you need to collaborate and connect with to help you in your mission?
It's an excellent question for several reasons. The first question you have to ask yourself, is it government's responsibility? That, depending on where you come from, that question may have 2 or 3 different answers as to what degree government should be involved. I try desperately to stay out of the way of the entrepreneur spirit, the business community, the soccer moms and ballet dads, because when government gets involved in issues, a lot of times we just bog it down. We get in the way of success, we get in the way of entrepreneurship, we get in the way of ideas because more times than not, we're looking backwards instead of looking forward because we have to rely on laws, regulation, rules, and a lot of the entrepreneurial solutions are out there, not within the government. So I think what we can do as a government is provide the platform for which the people that don't have the limitations that I might have as a government have the ability to do the expression, to make the ideas occur, to explore new ideas, to invest in new technologies, to figure out the solutions. So as you look at opportunities, you have to look at where am I in the way of the innovation of moving ahead above average and allowing the community to rise up where it'll make the most difference. The old thing, you teach a man the fish he'll eat for a lifetime, you give him the fish he only eats once. But if I can provide an opportunity for the community to come together to identify the problem and solve it and keep the government out of the way, we're going to have a lot more success. So my goal would be to provide the opportunities, provide the platform, and then stand back and watch the community make it happen. I'm simply, my hands are tied on so many different levels when it comes to trying to be the solution maker when the solution is probably out there, it just hasn't been discovered yet.
Okay. C. Tom Friedman said that one of the things we have to think about is PQ plus CQ is always greater than IQ. Passion quotient plus curiosity quotient is always greater than intelligence quotient. And certainly in your business as a venture capitalist, I'm sure you're constantly seeking out those folks who are both passionate and curious to help find the new thing or help find the right problem that needs to be solved. What kinds of things as folks who aren't venture capitalists can we be more aware of or do in this community to help create a greater ecosystem for those people who want to innovate?
Well, we have to be able to find the right people to do the kind of innovation that Tom was talking about. You know, you got to be able to find people with passion, to find people who are curious about things, to be sure that they are going to the universities that they need to be going to be sure that they were in high school or in vocational schools, wherever it is, to be sure that they are going into the kind of courses that they need to be getting so that they can express their passion and curiosity. Don't hold them back by having them take courses that are meaningless for them, because that just won't do them any good. And be sure and give them their freedom to work on things that they need to be able to do.
Moving from the interconnected to the interdependent, and of course one of the big themes about today's session and yesterday was collaboration. What does collaboration mean in terms of our challenges as a Metro Atlanta region from your perspective? And I'll let anybody start with that.
Well, I'll start. I think it's multifaceted, but certainly we need to collaborate as a transit system with the major employers to allow for easy access to all the different job opportunities around the region. We need to collaborate with the education institutions, whether it's the public schools or the private schools, university level, high school level, and what have you, to give students access to more opportunities from various different elements. And certainly we need to collaborate with the citizens more. One of the great things about the technology that's available to us today is that a person doesn't have to show up for a public meeting in order to express themselves about the changes that are coming to their communities and whatnot. They can communicate with us in a whole host of ways directly from their own front porches or in their own homes so that we can make decisions that best impact them in a positive way.
Jeffrey?
I'd like to propose that a wonderful collaboration for Atlanta would be for all of us to come together and declare Atlanta a city that welcomes immigrants and refugees.
Ron, what do you think?
If you want to pull business and manufacturers and corporations to Atlanta, new businesses, they're going to look at your education system. And so we really need to work together to make sure that we're preparing the students in Atlanta so they can take on those jobs, because if they don't feel like there's going to be someone there who has a diploma, they're not going to move their factory here. That's why we put the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta, so that we can not only train teachers from all over the country, but around the world. And we want people, when they think of Atlanta, think of innovation, education, what's different, what's hot, what's creative. That's why our school's here. I think it's a resource that we should use to help spread and make more of an impact in local schools.
Okay.
But I also would add that we had to have the government, the corporate world, the foundations, the education institution, they all had to work together to make it all happen. But we also need not to invent the wheel all over again. We tend to have a habit of coming up with conferences. We tend to come up with great ideals, but we don't tend to use things that we already have in place to make it work. We have a number of institutions here, the ATDC, the GRA, that are things in place that if we use them, we could get a lot of great use out of them and make things happen quicker than going out and reinventing the wheel.
Okay. In the world of globalization and the speed and the pace of it, sometimes there's a sense of we create winners and losers. But collaboration suggests that at the same time we're trying to solve problems, we're trying not to create a sense of winners and losers, but mutual win-win. So, how do we make those two thoughts reconcile with the challenges we have with transportation and public education and government getting out of the way, creating entrepreneurs and innovation? I'm giving you a lot, but I want to ask the big question: how do we reconcile the globalization that creates winners and losers with collaboration that creates mutual winners?
I believe that collaboration, we spoke a little bit earlier, it was mentioned a little bit earlier, that one of the uniqueness of Atlanta is the creativity and the entrepreneurship and the brilliance that exists already in our great city. I think our collaboration is our distinctive difference from the world that provides or tries to desire winners and losers. I think there's enough room, even in our small city of Atlanta, for everyone, no matter where you fit on the socioeconomic scale or on your education realm. I mean, I think it needs to be approached a little differently. And what I mean by collaboration, I guarantee you that the jobs that are the fourth graders and fifth graders that are currently in school today, the jobs that they will take when they're 26 and 27 don't exist right now. They simply don't exist. And we talk in Cobb about how you can go from a pre-K to a PhD without leaving Cobb County. But I think the collaboration needs to happen when the businesses get into their educational system all the way down to third grade to help start to teach and to show where we need to learn, where we need to develop, where we need to get our kids prepared for where the industries and where the world's going when they do get to the world, they get to 18, they get to 19, they get to 20. So they are relevant, so they're better prepared, so they're above average. But they're only going to be above average if they're prepared for the world that exists at that point, as opposed to one they're being taught for, which is the one that exists today. So I think collaboration between our business community and our school systems in terms of defining a curriculum that gets them prepared for what hasn't been defined yet is our greatest asset to make us different. And then if we do that, no matter where a kid tracks off to, they're going to be a winner, whether they're at a trade or a scientist or a brain surgeon or taking care of some of the more routine positions that we might have available. If we consider everyone a winner from the get-go and give them the right tools and the right track, Atlanta will end up with a society where we're filled with winners that are ready for the world and take on every opportunity, and we will show the rest of this world what it's like to have collaboration and what it's like to have success among all our folks if we just work together and vision it.
Big vision. Any other thoughts?
Well, I would certainly say if we don't collaborate, if we don't make the investment, we will simply fall behind. And what's been great about this city and great about this region, and it has produced some of the most historically iconic figures that people look all over the world to. And if we, with the talent we have in this room, the talent we have around this region, the talent we have around the state, if we simply put our minds to it and made investment the right way, we certainly can move ahead of the cities in this country and certainly ahead of many of the cities in the world. But we must get going. I'll give you a quick mass transit statistic. Your transit system compares very well with many other systems around the country in terms of our cost per passenger, cost per hour, and that sort of thing. But we are falling woefully behind in investment. The cities of Dallas and Houston, who we did a recent link trip with, those two cities are spending almost $1 billion in infrastructure on their mass transit systems over the next few years. MARTA's spending about $100 million. So while we're in front of or even leading those groups a bit now, that's going to catch up to us. The same thing can be said about some of the education investments, some of the road investments, those sorts of things. It's catching up, and those cities who we used to beat up on quite frequently will could possibly, if we don't begin to turn things around, be looking at MARTA and if its rearview mirror. So I think the energy of this room is fantastic, but we need to turn it into action.
So Tim said that one of his best jobs or most important jobs is to help government get out of the way where it doesn't need to be in the way in order to be a better partner. I work in a space where I work with a lot of governments and try to get them to collaborate on major issues affecting the region. But I would ask each of you who are not Tim or not me, what should government or what can government be doing to help make your jobs easier as you try to move the community forward from your perspective?
You want me to go 2 times in a row?
No. I'm looking at Jeffrey and Ron right now.
I'll be happy to you know, it's very difficult to talk about the Latino community in the United States today without thinking about the undocumented. And it's a fact. It's a reality in the United States. And what we're seeing in our work at the Latin American Association is that without immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform, where we alleviate some of these issues for mixed status families, and we're referring to families who have been here for 10 and 15 and sometimes more years, have established roots, they've built their families here. We have 15-year-old kids in our program, both parents have been deported. There are heart-wrenching stories in our community, and we find often that some of the local governments are looking to play the role of the federal government. In a sense, they're passing judgment on students. You can't really look at somebody and tell if they're documented or not, by the way, contrary to popular belief. So I would love for the local governments to suspend judgment on individuals and help us look at educating all of our young people and helping all of our families have safe and stable families.
Okay.
Every week we have the cool opportunity that on Fridays, every week, about 200 educators from all over the country will come visit our school and spend a day with us, and we hear from them. And what we hear week after week is that teaching to the test is killing teachers. It's all about preparing kids to teach to a test. It's worksheets and focus on a test. And it breaks my heart because education should be about teaching kids to love learning. Then you have lifelong learners. And so the problem is so much money is going to these tests and preparing kids to take these tests that we're not really focused on the real issue. The issue is teacher quality, and that I've been to all 50 states. Y'all, there's some bad teachers out there, I'm gonna tell you, and I've seen them. There's some great ones, but there are too many bad ones, and it's a disaster. So we're sinking all this money into lowering class size, but I'm like, look, I don't care if there's 30 kids or 13 kids in there. If she's a bad teacher with 30 kids, she's gonna be a bad teacher with 13 kids. It's not gonna really change. So we need to put more of a focus on retaining quality, getting the best and the brightest in the schools, because technology is great, and at our school we have jumped full forward into technology in so many ways. But not only does technology solve the problem, if you've got technology in a room with a bad teacher, you've got really nothing. And so what you need to have is teachers who have the ability to inspire kids, to make those relationships, and to show them how to use technology to be successful. That's where our energy needs to be going.
Thank you, Ryan. We're winding down here. We want to be respectful of everybody's time, but I want to ask you each to respond. 10 seconds or left. Give me one idea that you think is paramount for us to move forward as a community in the vein of collaboration, connecting, and communicating. One idea that you think is most important for us to move forward from this time, this day.
I'll start. I think we need to get past T-Splost and recognize that almost every community has a failed election, and regroup and come back, try again, make investments where necessary, and move ahead.
I'd say do something, because it's all nice to come here and hear all these people talk and prophesize and this, that, and this, that, but now you got to go back and put it into action. You've heard a nice talk. Now let's do something, people. Make a difference. Do it. Get involved.
We have got to be deliberate about reaching out to the diverse groups within our Atlanta region and be open to their differences and learn to understand them and work with them.
I think it's clear we need to embrace our diversity. We need to understand what we're selling. We have to understand who's buying, and we have to understand why they're buying. What I mean by that is, all too often, and T-Splost was a great example, we tried to sell the drill bit when people were trying to develop a hole. No one buys a drill bit because they need a drill bit. They buy a drill bit because they need a hole. We forgot to sell the hole. We were trying to sell the drill bit. We didn't make it relevant to the soccer moms and ballet dads. We talked to ourselves. I think it's important that we do something, embrace our diversity, forget the past and throw out our rearview mirrors, but remember what we're selling, remember who we're selling to, and make it relevant.
I think we have to bring all parties to the table, and we have to have action come out of it. Words are great, but action is better.
We're coming to the end now, and I want to leave you with just a few thoughts. You know, Plato said that in thinking about Athens, the ancient city that he loved so much, he said, the city is what it is because the citizens are what they are. And I think that says a lot to us even in today. This great region that we love and call Atlanta will only be what it will be if we will be what we want to be. CoLab was not the end of a great conversation. This is the beginning of great conversation, thinking, and as Ron Clark says, action. We hope that all of you will take the thoughts, the conversations, all the things that you've heard over the last day and a half, and think about how you individually and how we collectively come together to help move this great region, Atlanta, and launch it forward to be preeminent amongst the world's communities. And with that, I want to say a quick thanks to all of our sponsors. If you know any of them, thank them personally. If you don't, take a moment to thank them. And we also want to give a big thanks to Leadership Atlanta and their staff for putting this effort together.